What's up, YouTube? Welcome into Attacking Third. We have an absolutely fabulous show for you today alongside McCall Zerboni and Christine Cupo. I'm Lisa Carlin, and with Chris here, Cupo, she's in the chat like the cat meme. Christine, what do you want to hear from the people on YouTube? Oh, we can't hear her. This is so amazing. This is hilarious. Before we went live, we couldn't hear Christine. McCall, can we hear you?
How we doing out there?
Yes, we got you. Oh my gosh, this is kind of hilarious,
An
Christine.
inside look to the technical side, a little camera switch.
Oh, well, guys, if you're with us on YouTube, thanks. You never know what's going to happen. We're rolling with the punches here. We're taking swings where we can, hitting curveballs out of the park, and we couldn't do it without all of you. So thank you for hanging with us. Like this video, subscribe. We're going live all the time, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, and Sunday nights, immediately following the NWSL weekend wrap up. If you were here last Sunday with us and you joined us, let us know in the chat what you thought of everything. But it's good, McCall. So people join, they ask questions, they have conversations in the chat. Anything you want to hear or see in the chat today while we talk about some different things?
I can't wait to see the engagement, but we have a couple hot topics we're speaking about, and I would love to get people's view on things that are a little bit heated and they're kind of controversial. So I'm interested to see people's take on it.
Yes, absolutely. We're talking rookies. We're talking NWSL rookies. The age limit. Is there an age limit? There's a lot happening here, guys. This is so funny about Christine's mic. I'm so sorry to say.
Can we hear anything? Producer Mark doesn't want me to be great. This man cuts my mic every time I try to say something. I know it.
Don't blame him. Don't blame Mark.
Listen,
it's your own
I didn't get this fancy pants new equipment that I set up expertly that Mark double checked that somehow always conveniently cuts out whenever I need to make a point. This thing's rigged. I had to plug in my old mic. Anyway, we ride.
Sounds like user error, Christine. I'm going to be honest.
Listen, not everybody is great at everything, but I am.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you're back. I'm really glad that you're back and we hear your sound. I'm just going to say like $5 in the jar if you cut out again, because this is just too good.
Listen, my mic, old trusty, has never done me dirty the way the new stuff has. And I get it. I sound better on it, but here's what we're going with, okay? We're going to be a little hood.
Well, I like it. We've got people in the chat hanging with us. Thanks, everyone. Mark, are we good? Can we start the show? What's happening? I haven't heard anything yet. Well, we just love talking to all the people on YouTube. All right, guys, showtime. Don't go anywhere. Attacking Third starts right after this. Welcome into Attacking Third. Very special episode today with a lot of hot topics that we are diving into. I couldn't do it alone. I have my friends with me, Christine Cupo and McCall Zerboni. I'm Lisa Carlin. We are talking NWSL rookies. Without a draft, the age limit doesn't exist right now, and what that means for these players. Plus, current Kansas City player Lo LaBonta, she joins the show and gives her thoughts on the weekend. And everyone gives us so many questions. We love them. Thank you. We're finally answering them all today in an A3 Mailbag NWSL edition. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching on Galazzo Network, watching on YouTube, or listening as a podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. As a reminder, we drop A3 episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and on Sundays, immediately following the NWSL weekend. McCall, it is so good to have you back, my friend. How are you today?
Doing great. I'm loving this. I get to talk to you. I get to talk to the people. I get to stay what's going on with the game that I love so much. So let's get it started.
Christine, moment of truth. Can we hear you?
I'm just kidding. You can hear me.
That was actually really good.
Listen, she's quick on her feet. Okay, I'm hyped to be here. This is my first show with McCall, so welcome properly. I like the vibe. I like the vibe. I don't love the mic situation. Love the vibe.
Well, you look good. You sound good. We can hear you as of now. There will be $5 in the jar if we can't hear Christine at some point today, whether she's muted or her mic goes out. And we are going to blame her, not producer Mark. All right, guys, let's dive into it. Big news happening in NWSL this weekend because history was made when Gotham FC forward Mak Witham became the youngest player in NWSL history at 14 years and 8 months old. She checked in on stoppage time during Gotham's 1-1 draw against Seattle on Sunday, or excuse me, on Saturday. She took the youngest title from San Diego Waves Mel Barcenas, who made her debut at 15. So, I mean, 14 years and 8 months. Christine, what the heck were you doing when you were 14? Put it into context for us.
Oh God. Being very embarrassing for sure. I was playing JV for high school, and probably drawing hearts and stars around somebody's stupid son's name on my notebooks. I don't know. Definitely a level of embarrassment involved there. Trying to get into trouble, but not doing a great job. Like I was too good of a kid, but I definitely was not pro quality, let me get in the game. I was trying to figure out like what extracurriculars I was trying to do. I was running track and playing soccer and just vibing. I can't imagine having the mindset of being a professional anything at that point. I think legit keeping it a book, I wanted to be like a soccer player, veterinarian, fashion designer. If you want to know the full scope of how my brain worked then.
McCall, what were you up to? You knew what you were doing. I bet you were on the straight and narrow.
I mean, I loved football and I was very serious about it. But if you would have asked me if you want to make it your livelihood and just like kind of throw away your childhood, I would have been like, absolutely not. I'm a kid. Like I've got a lot of things that I still need to explore and that I want to do, socially and just to be free as a youthful human being. But like once it's your job and it's your livelihood, if you would ask me if I wanted to go pro, I'd have been like, no.
That is essentially the conversation we're about
What
to
were you
have.
doing, Carlin? You're not getting off this easy. What were you doing? Tell
Well,
me.
what was this, freshman year of high school, right? That's
Mhm.
about how old you are when you're 14. I had just wrecked my knee for the first time, so I got my first knee surgery. I think it was like end of 13, but I couldn't play high school soccer, and it was devastating. I felt like my world was taken away from me and crumbling because that was the first time my knee, kind of crapped out on me. But did a lot of other things that year. I was the manager for the soccer team because I wanted to stay involved. You guys know me. I'm a little too type A not to be in charge of something. But yeah, freshman year of high school, I was like listening to the Jonas Brothers and being like a little, I don't know, like a little punk at times, if you will.
I can't imagine in any age that you were a punk, Lisa. You are my favorite nerd, and I mean that so affectionately.
Well, this year in 2025 in the NWSL, the elimination of the college draft really opened the doors and has sparked the conversation of what is a rookie in the NWSL. And since 2024, 13 youth players have joined the NWSL. 12 different players turning pro early, leaving college early and joining the professional game. And this really all started as the catalyst with Olivia Moultrie back in 2022 when the NWSL created the U18 mechanism, when Moultrie sued for her right to play as an under 18 player. But having a 14-year-old, 15-year-old competing in the NWSL against full grown adults has sparked a conversation. How young is too young? McCall, as someone who is very recently out of the game, how young is too young to be a professional athlete?
I mean, I want to start by saying I'm really happy for her because it is what she wants. Sometimes you have that concern, is the parent pushing too hard? But this is what she wants. So I'm happy for her that she's achieved it. But in the same regard, I think when you're a young person, you really don't know what you're giving up yet. You think it's so cool. I get to play professional ball at such a young age, but you don't know what you're sacrificing and what you can never get back. And, she is dedicated. Her family has moved to New Jersey to follow this dream for her. So it's bigger than her as well. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's a total life change because she can't go by herself. She's too young. So when you think about all the aspects of a young person, and she needs parental guidance everywhere she goes. Her father has to travel with her on every away trip. He has to drive her to every training session. And, too young, think about what she's being exposed to in our locker room talk or at our meals, and speaking of that, she can't even come into the locker room because she's underage. So then she's isolated in a separate locker room, and she's kind of missing out. It's hard for a team to build that camaraderie with such a young person on your age because there's natural laws that separate you.
I want to jump in there just to give the rules and regs of the road for NWSL and what it means to be operating under these rules and regs. So U18 mechanism means that when you are under that certain age, again, like 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, you're not a legal adult. You do have to live within your team market with the parent or guardian. That's non-negotiable. With that, you do need to be separated within your dressing rooms, whether you're on the road or home. As an aside, you also have restrictions as to whether or not you can be traded or sold away. You cannot do anything at all. Your contract is with that team that you're housed with, unless you offer consent of you and your parent and guardian until you're 18 years old. So when you're looking at a Mak Witham contract, it's through 2028, which at first, even I had a knee-jerk response to that where I was like, that's a really long time for what is essentially a kid. And that is why. So I just want to clear that up from the top, that there are certain things in place. And then they also operate under certain age restrictions regarding work requirements in which you'd need work papers. I, as a kid, did also work at 14. There's a limit to your hours and things like that that you can do, and whether or not past a certain hour in the evening, and things like that that they have to operate within, that are universal outside of what NWSL has implemented.
Are all of those rules implemented in the NWSL, Christine, considering like the time limit? Like there are games that kick off at 10 p.m. There are night games. There's a lot that goes into this when you're 14. Like that could be past your bedtime.
I think that, I mean, I don't want to be so patronizing to say it's best past their bedtime, but yeah, some of those things will come into play where you can't play past a certain time, or you can't work more than X hours in a certain day/week that need to be adhered to, just because those are state and city guidelines.
This is not just isolated with Mak Witham. She's just the one that made history this weekend. But across the NWSL, there are a number of teenage players. I'm going to call them teenagers, but players that have foregone college, have come right out of grade school essentially to join and train in the NWSL. And there are a lot of pros and cons of that when you are a player like that. McCall, you said that you wouldn't have done that when you were 14, right? You still wanted to be a kid. Why wouldn't you have? What are some of those things that a player might be, quote, missing out on if they do this?
And genuinely, I wouldn't have chose to have a 14-year-old on my team either, because I see the way that it is difficult in the environment for the other players, for the senior players. We have certain language we use or things that we talk about that may not be appropriate for a 14-year-old. And so you're kind of walking on eggshells a little bit, or just a little bit nervous because there is a child in our meal room now, or, in our meetings. And so it kind of creates this tension where you want people to be themselves. That's how you build camaraderie. And that's so important in the women's game, that there is a good culture and environment, that we all have, trust and respect and fluidity amongst all the personalities. And it gets a little bit more challenging when there is a young person that frankly could be my daughter. And so I took a note to look after her. I couldn't imagine what that would have been like. So it kind of took her under my wing. But at the same regard, it's really difficult that you have to kind of censor and filter everything that you're doing. And so it does create a difficult dynamic.
It's also probably isolating for a player as well to be so young, to not be allowed in the locker room, to not be allowed in certain situations and training areas because you are underage. I mean, you can't drive, right? Your parents probably dropping you off to practice. There has to be an element of isolation when you are a teenager playing in a professional level. But this is a whole conversation around all of this that really dives into is it too young? Is it too young, Christine?
So I take issue with this question because I feel like we aren't really having this conversation for the men's side of the game. And I understand why it's happening now in the women's game because there is such growth that there's now investment. Without the college draft, I think that they're seeing opportunities. And so it's modeling more after the European game, but even domestically in the men's game. Okay. We saw Kevin Sullivan, 14 years old, Ethan Waneri for Arsenal, 15 years old, Mauricio Baldaviso, Devian Kimbrough, who's 13 years old, and Lamine Yamal, who's now 16 years old, out of La Masia. La Masia's whole model is to promote youth out of academy. And to McCall's earlier point, yes, I do think that that means that we're going to see a proliferation of academies for women's sides, both domestically and abroad, as this starts to make the shift. When you look at both the playing side, the game that we know and love, and then the business side of soccer/football, they all will eventually be in line. And by that, I mean, when opportunity exists outside of just simply I'm playing to love it and I'm playing because this is now a solid investment, the game shifts. And we've seen it happen over and over again with the men's game. This isn't the first time we've seen youth suddenly get thrust into the spotlight. Um, Lionel Messi started playing 30 years ago as a kid, which is insane. Not everyone's going to be a prodigy like that, but subsequent to that, we had Freddie Adu, who's the next American hope, who was also a kid playing for DCU. Um, some of them are success stories largely, and some of them, yes, it's floundering. I don't think that the broader conversation takes into account necessarily the development of the child player outside of the academy systems. And I think that that's something that we're lacking in that gap building with the current league and potentially younger girls coming into NWSL. That infrastructure will necessarily be built.
McCall, Christine's talking about Lionel Messi and jumping into the game, but the men's programs around the world have incredibly successful academy programs that help shepherd them into the professional game. And the women's programs don't have that, especially here in the NWSL.
Exactly. I think it's on the developmental side, right? They have an infrastructure where they are basically creating these young men into professionals way long before the professionals. So it's like they have more practice and engagement into a very refined and place that you have a lot of pressure on you. I mean, think about Mak Witham. She went from going to playing in front of like 100 parents on the sideline in Lancaster, California, for a state cup game, to checking into a game at the arena for Gotham FC with tens of thousands of people watching her. Like, she never had that in between gap as far as that exposure. And then also just the training environment, she's going from playing against other 13 and 14-year-olds. And then now at training, I can see her head spinning, like she gets really lost in passing patterns and things like that because it's such a large jump in level. But also I have to argue, it's different for a man than a woman. A 13-year-old woman and a 17-year-old woman is very different. Our bodies change. We go through puberty. We don't know how we're going to develop. We just change a lot more from those ages as young boys to older women. And you just don't really know what you're going to get or how you're going to change and what you're going to go through.
I agree. I think that understanding the development of women, hormonally going through puberty is a very different sliding scale than men do. And if you think about a 14-year-old playing against a 35-year-old 10-year professional in the NWSL, the 35-year-old has been weightlifting for about the entirety of the life of the 14-year-old, understanding their body, having recovery in place, the strength, the technique. There's so much around it that is shaped by being a professional that no amount of talent can bring you up to speed, especially the strength and physicality of a 14-year-old. Like we talked about when we were 14, I was a stick figure at 14. I was about 5'9", and I probably weighed like 90 pounds. I would have gotten rocked if I went up against McCall in her prime. Rocked. I probably still would get rocked.
I mean, Lisa, I think that both of us at the same age, I would have rocked you. I was never the gentle, dainty player. Like, I literally was coming for you. You would have been like, free.
But you were playing against other 14-year-olds, see? So you don't really know. I would never trained against a woman.
but also guys, which is a whole other conversation. And the more I played with guys, the more aggressive I got. Um, I think it's hard because I think that we run into the hazard of overgeneralizing when it's sort of a very individual thing. And I preface that by saying, I know I went into this saying, like, we can't just isolate Mac in this, but ultimately it will come down to an evaluation and analysis of her as a footballer once we get enough minutes to actually assess her. Um, what that means, if you're going to be sort of this emblematic teenager that comes into the league that everyone's going to pay attention to, that's a whole other level of self-awareness that she also is going to have to confront, that every single one of the guys in her position have had to.
We have to look at the business side of it as well. So the reason the club wants to get her now, they've scouted her, they have potential that they're seeing, they want to make an investment in her, and if they don't snag her at a young age, then another club will. So, and that's why her contract is so long as well. They see a lot of future in her, and it may not be a now thing, but they want to get her rights. They want to have her, they want to lock her down because they do see her becoming a very, very prolific pro, and it may not be right now. So we have to think of the business side from the club as well. They really just want to get her and have her and lock her down.
Oh, 1,000%, McCall. I think that that's a lot of the drivers here right now in terms of business decisions, is that women's soccer and football more broadly is growing so quickly that everybody wants to get in early. And that also includes on players. They're going to gamble on them and see what they can actually get out of it. She already has a Nike contract. I definitely wasn't 14 with a Nike contract. So, I mean, she essentially becomes her own enterprise at this very young age. And then the only thing that you could possibly compare it to are teen boys that have been in her position, or I'd say like child actors at this point.
And it's larger than Mac, but I do want to give her props because there is no way in a million years I was being even considered to be a pro at 14 years old. And whether people think she's ready or she's not, or she's too young or she's not, she's in the conversation and she has become a pro. And that is so amazing and spectacular. And we really do have to give her some credit with that for sure.
Absolutely. We give credit to her. But McCall, to your point earlier, teams are finding these young talents. They're signing them to long-term contract for a number of different reasons, right? The long-term growth, to be able to develop them. It's this own kind of like academy within a contract, if you will, for a player. But we're seeing her get time. What are some of the parameters of a player that a coach is looking at in training to know you're ready to actually hit the pitch against opposition, not just your teammates in training that maybe might go a little bit easier on you in a tackle?
Well, beyond the physical side, the cognitive side, like what she's getting in training at her youth club and the way her training sessions go there are just so far and below of what is required of you as a pro and at the training sessions that we have. And like I said, just kind of witnessing her feeling a little overwhelmed and lost. And at times, frankly, players would get frustrated with her because she would disrupt the drill, or I think she still really needs to learn, because she's an attacker, right? And she still needs to learn how to run, where to run, and when to run. It's one thing where you're fast at your youth level and you can blow past everybody there, but with these really, really good defenders who have a lot of experience on the world stage and have seen the best in the world, like, just speed, and they're gonna beat you with their brain. They're going to anticipate everything that you're doing. So for her, she needs to get to that soccer IQ cognitive level as an attacker.
Is there an age restriction, Christine? Should there be an age restriction at all?
I don't think so. I think it should be individual evaluation for sure. I wouldn't put the restrictions on the women's game that aren't existing for the men's. I think that we play the same game. There's no deviation in rules, law, pitch size, ball size. Everything should hold equal. But I do think that the money side, the business side, is going to infiltrate and change a lot of the landscape that we have known.
There's been questions about if Mak Witham making her appearance this weekend is a business ploy, is a social media strategy to get Gotham's name out there. How much of that is an influence in perhaps teams giving her a minute at the end of stoppage time just to break that record of Barcenas, to say, hey, now we have the youngest player? Is that all part of this too, McCall?
Could be, but if you're good enough, you're good enough. The age shouldn't matter, you know? And especially since we're seeing the league get a little bit younger, you know, we have all ages above 14.
Mhm.
And, you know, players are also allowed to play a little bit longer now because we have the resources to support our bodies and keep us healthy and keep elongating our careers. But like I said, if you're good enough, you're good enough. But at the same time, there's just so much that comes along with it that might not be worth it right now, and maybe in the future it'll be at a better place, but at the moment it's pretty jarring for an environment and a club. And if they think that it's worth it on the business side, I just hope that they've thought about all of that. But you know, a lot of times our owners aren't thinking at a high level of a player and what we have to deal with in and on our locker room and our pitch every day.
This is an ongoing conversation in the NWSL with teams, with players, as players get younger and younger. It ultimately it comes down to a player and their parents' decision and the commitment to do this in the sport. I'd also argue that the NWSL has had a lot of conversations around this and putting different restrictions and policies in place to attempt to protect these players at some level and at some extent, to allow them the space to grow, to mature mentally, physically, to compete ultimately at the highest level with all these U18 mechanisms in place, but also allowing players as young as 13 to train and to compete and have the option to sign a contract with a club. This conversation is ongoing throughout this year. We'll revisit it and talk about it. But Lo LaBonta, Kansas City current midfielder, she comes back on 83. She's back with the crew. She also touches on this. She's coming up next on Attacking Third. Don't go anywhere.
We dig it. Do you? The Pro Volleyball Federation on CBS Sports Network.
Welcome back to Attacking Third. We've got a special segment because Lo LaBonta is back with us. Lo, we are coming off of a good conversation about having some of these rookies or teenagers playing in the league. And you've played with them, you've played against them, you've trained with them. So what are some of the challenges of having young first-year professional players, whether it's having them in part of a development form, training with the club, versus being really big contributing factors to how a team plays and winning on the pitch?
Yeah, and don't forget basically raising them as well. I actually met one of, my teammates, she's still 17, 18, I think, in June, Katie Scott, and I met her parents at the home opener this weekend, and she was like, "Well, come over, like, meet my parents. This is my mom, my dad," and I was like, "And I'm team mom over here with my babies." I have to get all these facials, to look young like my teammates, but it is special. I think it gives you a whole nother perspective of the game. I'm kind of old school, like grind, grind. And this newer generation coming up of very skilled athletes trying to come into this league that is very transitional, very physical. Um, it's interesting, and it's sometimes you're like, I have patience, I am kind, I love, uh, but these young players just want to learn and want to just great grab onto any information you'll give them. So it's funny when you think of the age difference. Like, I am double the age of a lot of these players, and I enjoy it. They keep me young, but it's an interesting topic for sure.
Lo, we never would have
That was
known you're double their age. Never.
Yeah,
that was
it's
so
all
Mean Girls.
these
Like, I'm a
facials.
cool mom.
I am, I swear.
You girls keep me young. We need to like clip that for social, I beg. Um, do you think, Lo, and obviously this is sort of starting to move in the direction of what we see more broadly in Europe, where the college system isn't such a fixture in place that would essentially make players older as they enter their pro careers. Fixtures like La Masia, where you've seen Messi come out of that at a very, very young age and they've sort of moved forward. It seems like NWSL has gotten this injection of youth that's been even 17 years old or younger in recent seasons. And now with the alleviation of the draft, I think my expectation is that's going to become the normal mainstream movement. As a vet of the game now, 11th season, how do you see this sort of changing, even maybe possibility to the way that you play?
Yeah, I think, when this first started happening, when Olivia Moultrie, basically won the case against the league and was able to play, and now we were able to have these younger players, it was always asked from us who went to college and graduated and went through that system, do you recommend they go? And maybe back in the day, I was like, oh, yeah, I loved college. But now we're starting to transition to where a lot of these clubs are creating these academies now, just like on the men's side. And we're going to start with even younger players and bring them through the system. And I think one of the coolest thing is signing homegrown players. It's just that you just rep your city and your club differently. So I love it. I think, a big almost pro in this league now is Claire Hutton, the person that plays beside me that has been getting called in the national team. People may forget that last year she was a rookie. She was 18. She skipped out on going to college and now she's getting called in the national team. So now I just eat my words when I said these youngins need to go to college. They're coming in, they're proving themselves, and I'm a fan.
Someone like Hutton, too, if she did go to college, it would be a vastly different experience. You wouldn't be in and around pros every day, training alongside other internationals and national team superstars. I doubt she would have even been called into a senior national team camp if she was in college, right? They would probably still think of her a little bit more along the lines of a U20 or, U18 camps to bring her in and into that mix. But when you take that next step and you're every single day around other professionals, you get that rub a little bit of being a pro and continuing to take those next steps in your career. That's what I see from someone like Hutton. Okay, Lo, congrats are in order for an opening weekend of fireworks for KC Current, a big win over Portland. But aside from all the goals and the great play, we got a Michelle Cooper 24th minute goal, followed by what looked to be a Lo LaBonta inspired celebration. Dare I say choreographed? Break it down. Did you practice this, Selly? How did it come about?
So this, everybody asks me, do you plan celebrations? And I don't. So we were literally about to go out on the field, warm up. We were lacing up our boots. And I just looked at Cooper. Like, obviously, I asked Temwa, what are you going to do? Not if you score a goal, when you score a goal. And she was like, I have one. And I go, okay, can't wait. And I saw Cooper. I said, well, what are you doing? And she was like, remember when you had me over for Super Bowl? And we're watching the halftime show, and there's a part of Kendrick Lamar's halftime show where like 50 people were doing this little sidestep, and I was like, clip it, we're using it. She remembered it. She said, we're doing this. And I said, bet. And she lined it up perfectly. And I was so excited that we got a goal, Selly, on the first game. Made my heart happy. And also, what a banger of a goal. Oh my gosh.
25 yards out, she put some sauce on that. I think Kendrick would have been proud, to be fair.
Bro, surely America is proud for sure.
Just, not to add salt to the wound, but that Super Bowl weekend was quite sweet for my Philadelphia 11 heart.
Honestly,
Oh, I knew this was coming.
I love it. I'm a Chiefs fan because obviously they pay my bills, but I will give you your kudos. That shout out to them.
Thank
Jalen
you.
Hurts, Quan Barkley. That was a
So good.
class performance.
So
Yes.
good. Wow. We're getting her over to the green side. Both of you guys wearing green today. For the Eagles? For the Irish? Who knows? Who knows?
Celtic, even though I think they got whooped this weekend against Rangers, but it's all right. It's a good jersey.
All right. Across the NWSL, we got to see 21 goals in this opening weekend. We didn't get a 9-goal thriller out of KC, but we did get a couple. 3 for Kansas City, 1 for Portland in that win. But there was a lot to take in across the 7 matches, Lo. And as a player and someone who got to take in some of these games, what's a theme that you noticed about all these different goals that were scored?
I'll give one shout out real quick. 2 sixes scored goals this weekend. Shout out to my sixes. None of them are on my team, but I always love when a 6 scores a goal with McCutcheon and Kiki Pickett. Those were both bangers. But overall, I will say my common theme for all these games were pressure pockets, which created opportunities on goal. I think, with this league now, teams are, wanting to develop and build out the back. but you have to be so sharp when you're doing that because you have athletes on the front line that will pick off these passes and create opportunities on goal. We saw Banda do it. We saw Spirit with Hatch tapping one after Ricketts hit one off the bar, maybe bounce in. I don't know. We need that goal line technology. But these will come from transition, and this league, I think, is the best at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the turnover is low and high pressure from everyone across the league is different. It's almost as if there's an evolution of the game at times, knowing that teams are going to step up high. And when you're on the offense of that, trying to build out of that high press, is it that much more nerve-wracking knowing that, okay, these teams are going to push us into these pressure pockets as we're trying to break the press?
Yeah, and that's, I think that's the beauty of the game that coaches are always trying to come up with these new ways. And I love that we are trying to become possession oriented in this league. That is the beautiful side of soccer, right? That is what fans love. But I will tell you one thing fans love more, and that's goals. And so if you are not sharp, these athletes will come pick it off, hit bangers. I mean, Banda, I don't even know how far that one was out, but she's fast and she's strong and she's gonna finish. So, especially against Orlando, if you're not sharp, they will take advantage. And I mean, they took advantage 6 times, I think, this weekend.
There's also so much more pressure on goalkeepers, I will say, in this high pressure system that we're seeing because, I mean, you can be a Mandy McGlynn and get an assist in a game for Utah, but there was also a lot of moments where she didn't have options to pass out of the back and she was being forced into these pressure pockets. And high press from Bay against Utah was forcing McGlynn to play not the best passes. So goalkeepers are now going to have to evolve their game so much more to be able to play with their feet, to be able to build out of the back and just combat all the high press that is really being a developing tactic in the NWSL that we're seeing. Lo, in your game, there's also, along with the celebrations that happened during the match, but post-match, there was a big surprise that watching on the broadcast, all of a sudden I was like, whoa, proposal? What's happening? What's happening? So what the heck happened?
There was one person that was very surprised. So Ellie Willer, her boyfriend, had reached out to, I think, almost every single person on the team, people who work for the club, and was like, look, this is what I'm trying to do. Home opener. I'm bringing her family out, my family out, the players, let's set something up. So all of the players, we were like, oh my gosh, we have to win this game. Like, there was so much pressure to make this perfect for Ellie. What would have made it the best is if she would have scored. I think she had one opportunity in the game, but last year she scored on the home opener as well. But it's right. She's got a fat ring on that finger now. It is amazing. She was so surprised. I think our coach was also surprised too. I didn't tell him about it, but we were about to, we're heading into post game, media, and he was just asking me a question. I was like, shh, Blacko, like, Ellie's getting proposed to right now. And he was like, what? And I'm like, you don't need the stress of knowing that heading into a game. You could focus on the game. I'll focus on the players. And it was just an amazing game. That ring just wrapped it up perfectly for us.
She
Who
looks
says
surprised.
soccer isn't romantic?
I know. I love it so much. It doesn't necessarily always love me back, but I love soccer.
Yeah, that sentiment resonates.
But pressure, I mean, I like your theme, Lo, that you have of pressure, of the team feeling pressure and high press coming. We also got the announcement over the weekend that longtime U.S. women's national team star and Angel City forward Sydney Leroux was going to be stepping away from the game, taking a bit of a mental health leave due to all the pressure that she feels as an athlete. Of course, we're wishing her well and stand by her in support of this decision, but Lo, it can't be easy to make this decision by any means.
Absolutely not. And especially if you know Sydney Leroux, she will play with a broken leg, broken arm, anything. But this is the reality of the game, is that these athletes are human beings off the field. Sydney Leroux, for example, is taking care of 2 other little precious human beings as well. And so these are the types of pressure, right? You have you always have your family, your friends, yourself, your mental health that you always have to almost put first, because at the end of the day, this is a game and this is the reality. And so I am honestly so proud of her and grateful for her to just put her mental health first and focus on that. And she knows she will come back, everybody, with welcoming arms. Just come back to us when you're ready. We have your back. I think the club showed her that, and her teammates are definitely showing that. And I think when you have that support, it makes this decision much easier.
And now, because of the new CBA, players actually have the space to be open about a situation like this and understand that they are still going to have a paycheck coming in. They can take the time and the resources provided to them by their clubs, by the league, to put their mental health first. And we're with you, Sydney Leroux, of course, keeping her in our thoughts as this season goes on. And you, Lo. Thanks for hanging with us. You got another busy week, right? You got trainings and games. It's like the hamster wheel cycle never ends now. And you're throwing
Yeah, but I start right. But I start with you guys. It's all happy. And then I go into training and I have film and I get torn apart. But this is a positive start to my week every time.
So wait, if this is the pressure episode, we get diamonds, each of us at the end, right, Producer Mark?
Yeah.
We're on theme. Just lots of diamonds. No, jewelry.
Yes, all the diamonds after the pressure. Lo, thank you. Mwah. Have a fabulous week. And don't go anywhere, guys. We've got more A3. We're doing a mailbag segment next. You ask questions, we get to answer them. Stick with us.
12 teams, one epic battleground, and it's the most feared of them all, San Francisco. This city is legendary for high winds, brutal tides, and an eerie, unforgiving race course. It's all or nothing.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Attacking Third. Ding dong, Mail's here. You guys ask questions, we get to answer them. So thank you. If you have questions for us, for McCall specifically, Lo, Christine, Darian, Sandra, any of us, hit us up on socials at Attacking Third, or of course on YouTube in the chat. You got to subscribe though, and you can join the convo. Let's dive in because we got a lot of questions. First question, Cabraham. I feel like we always get questions from Cabraham. Thank you. This question today says, which free agent signing had the most impact? McCall, over the weekend, we got to see a lot of them, but which one stood out to you?
I'm going to go with my girl, Delaney Sheehan. I just sometimes can't even believe that she is still underrated as much as she is, and that she was able to find a new club for herself at free will. I think she's just getting started at Houston Dash. Once she gets a little bit more comfortable, then she's going to ball out and do her thing. And she's very flexible. She can be a 9. She used to be a 9. Then, we moved her back to the midfielder, but she can play anywhere in the attacking third. And so I'm excited to watch her grow.
My free agent signing is Utah Royals' Bianca St. George. She adds a level of physicality and intensity that Utah was truly lacking in 2024. Plus, she scored the goal. She looks good pressing. I mean, there was a lot of free agent signings that got the start. And to me, St. George, her impact was immediate for the Royals this weekend.
This is hard because I feel like there were so many free agents. I'm going to go Narumi for Washington Spirit. I think that we haven't seen the best of her yet, but I think that she's going to be a great asset pulling her over from North Carolina.
Question number 2. This one comes at us from WF Mayer, I'm going to say. Would it be an improvement to do away with draws in the regular season? This is a whole conversation, but it sounds a little bit like the Summer Cup, McCall.
How would you solve them? How do you solve a win? Because players can really only play 120 minutes of soccer on their legs. So would you go straight into pens? Would you flip a coin? I think to find that information first. But truly what I love
what
about
if it was,
football,
McCall, what if it was just like the Challenge Cup or the Summer Cup, where after 90 minutes it went straight into penalties?
I think the beautiful game about soccer is that you can get a tie. It's one of the only sports in the world that you can get a tie in regular season. And that's what makes the table inch across or get so close or so far away. And then that's what makes goals valuable too, because then we have to go to goal differential. And we all love to see goals. That's what makes the game exciting. So I love the way that it is.
Yeah, I'm in favor of keeping things as is. I feel like why do you want to change things so much from just general rules more broadly? I already take issue with like the good behavior rule. That is just stupid. Why would you want to alleviate the possibility of draws? Who also wants to watch like a nil-nil draw that was like tactically beautiful but boring as hell? Go to pens. Just leave it as is. Like let it run.
Especially because the argument of penalties is so unlike the game of football when a game is determined by that. I love a draw because that's what makes the table so tight, as McCall said. And everywhere else, aside in the NWSL, right, in Europe, winning the Shield, winning your league is winning the league. And that's what it comes down to. All those draws, those goal differentials, there's so much more pressure on that.
You know what?
Next
On that,
question.
Lisa, I don't think we give enough love to the Shield winner. Do you know how
Exactly. I don't
difficult
think so
that is?
either.
You are the most
Yeah.
consistent team the entire season. Every week in and week out, you get points pretty much. And everyone focuses on the championship. But like honestly, the Shield winner, let's really like give some hype on that this year because it's an incredible, incredible
Yes.
thing to achieve.
To
Like
win
to
the
me
Shield,
mentally, that's the thing to win. Like, yeah, you want to play that less, but like that means so much more contextually than we won this one game at a playoffs. Cool.
to win the Shield, you have to win the most over 26 games. To win the championship, you have to win 3 games in a row, which is crazy to think about. Let's move on. Next question we have coming from EMF 1984. Chicago, you good? Christine, is Chicago good?
No, bro, they are very bad. They are not good. They not spiritually, not physically. Things are bad in Chicago. They should have worried more about what they were doing tactically, player personnel, how they were going to form an identity than worrying about the badge identity. Like Chicago Red Stars, Chicago Stars, I don't care. Figure your stuff out. Like you had the same amount of time in the offseason as everybody else. You knew what you were coming up against last season. Lauren, I beg.
Where can they get better, McCall? What do we need more from Chicago?
So I'm gonna go with they moved the Red Stars from their name because they're a blue collar team. Let's go with that. Okay. They're hard
Okay.
That's a
workers.
great
I
little
like
positive
the
spin.
glass
Okay.
is half full. Okay.
I'll give them, their credit and what they're good at. They have been a blue collar team for years. Every time that they did make the playoffs, they grinded in there. They were always a very physical side. And especially against, more talented technique teams, they really got stuck in and they disrupted play. And that's been kind of their MO and their identity for a while. But what I saw from them this last week, they didn't even really live up to that blue collar name. I mean, even, strong, rough players like Shea Groom and, players that just break up plays. I didn't really see a lot of that. And I feel like because they lacked belief, I feel like they were very hesitant. They didn't really play like they had faith in their lineup, their system, their opponent was very scary. And I think it got to them.
To throw a bone to the Stars, they did play against the best team in the league, Orlando Pride, right? It was an uphill battle to start, and to be pummeled 6-0 has to hurt the confidence a little bit. Week 2, though, Chicago, they get another chance, redemption to go against another team. This time it's Houston Dash, so a bit of a more of an even battle, I will say, but it's going to be a tough season for the Stars, especially for Alyssa Nair. I'm sending her a lot of prayers this year, a lot of prayers and strength to
We should light
stay
some candles
strong.
too.
Yeah, stay strong in that back line. Life gave me lemons. I like this name. This was a fun question. When will Taylor Flint get a national team call up? I'm going to add in there, get another national team call up, because back in 2022, under Vlatko Ananovsky as a head coach, she did earn 12 caps. She scored 2 goals during that time. But as a fellow midfielder, McCall, when's the next one coming for Flint?
What she has and what she brings is so unique. She could be a really good asset for the women's national team. Unfortunately, the players around you and the success of your team has so much to do with your form and your performance. And I think Louisville is still trying to hit their stride. They're still trying to get some good performances, and she's still trying to get flow with the players around her in the midfield and in her front line. And until they have better connection and they're all in form and firing on all cylinders, it's going to be difficult for her to perform, a strong 7 or 8 out of 10 every game. And that's usually when you start getting the looks and the call up again, is when you're consistently giving a 7 and an 8 ranked game out of 10. That really, really makes you stick out, because you have to think as a coach as well. Like, you want to rely on your players, and you don't want to call somebody in who's a question mark. Maybe they're going to be good today. Maybe they're going to be just decent today. But if you can put in consistent performances, it's like, okay, that's an asset, and I want to bring that in.
I think if Flint had initially been called up in a different way, forward looking, the way that Emma Hayes is running things in sort of a futures camp, just to get a glimpse, it would have probably been more favorable to her. The way that things were executed under Vlatko, for me, she just wasn't good enough at the time, and she kind of just got thrust into a team that essentially did have enough personnel that were better, that could have done the job. I think I don't see her getting called up again unless there's like a injury crisis. I don't know who she would actually take the place of.
Positives for Taylor Flint. She can play higher up as more of an 8, more of a 10. She can also play deeper as a 6. However, we look at the pool of U.S. women's national team players right now and narrow that down just to midfielders. That does include someone like a Croy Bethune, who's coming back from injury, a Jaden Shaw, who can also play in the front line, who provides line versatility. Who would Flint replace? Whose spot would she take? And that is a question that right now, I don't think anyone. I don't think she would outplay anyone. As McCall mentioned, her lack of consistency across multiple games, the lack of how Louisville performs, so much of that plays into what is going to happen for her. But you also have to be so skilled in all phases of the play. That is attacking, defended, passing, interceptions that you're doing, shot quality, consistency. For me, it's just not there for Taylor Flint right now. Next question that we got, looking back at this past NWSL weekend, which of the teams that earned a draw looks the most promising? There's a lot to choose from here because we had 4 games end in a draw. Christine, which one's the most promising, though, of those 8 teams?
I still say North Carolina. I think that, it does take them a little bit to get going. They're more quality than they actually showed up. There were learnings there. They just were making unnecessary errors. But I think that this being this early in the season, week 1, the world is still their oyster. I think that they'll figure it out. The flow will improve. They'll get more decisive. Finishing will improve. Yeah, I think that they could have done better.
North Carolina doesn't have a goal scorer. They don't have someone out and out that's going to score for me. So that's my biggest question mark for them. I was very impressed with Angel City's play. I think the Thompson sisters have elevated their style. They are looking more confident on the ball. Christen Press coming back into the fold. Kennedy Fuller looked to be growing into her game as well. And Ange Anderson in goal. She looked confident. She owned her box. She had good shot stopping ability. She could play out of the back. Angel City is young and hungry. And I had so many question marks about them coming into this year under an interim head coach like Sam Lady, and they very positively impressed me this opening weekend.
Yeah,
McCall,
I agree with both of those. Those were going to be my mentions. North Carolina, courage for sure. If I know anything about Sean Nahas, he knows how to put a team together and get the best out of all his players. Like, he knows how to get all his players in form, and it may take a little bit more time this season because they did make some, pretty gnarly adjustments in their roster. But they're going to be great. I have them in my top 4. And then Angel City, I loved seeing Alyssa Thompson come alive. I really think that she is going to be wonderful as she grows in her career. And think about every day at training, she's learning from Press, and, Sydney Leroux for a while when she was healthy and on the pitch. Like, she's only going to get better. So to see her making very dangerous and dynamic runs and making herself very threatening, like, that's what I believe that she can do. And it was a joy to watch her. And I think Angel City is going to be fun.
Speaking of Christen Press, we got a very specific question about the U.S. women's national team, former superstar from Deanne CMC. why didn't Press play? She was on the bench, McCall. She came back from her ACL. Why didn't we get to see her? What do you think?
There's a lot that can go into it we don't really know. Could be coach selection. I doubt it. I feel like she's always valuable. She could have been dealing with a little niggle that, maybe after warm up, she was like, it doesn't feel that good. Please don't use me if you don't need me, kind of thing, So there's a lot that goes into it. I think she still has a lot to add to this game. I think she's still good enough. I think she's a veteran that can help people develop. And I think that she can affect a game just with her experience. She may have slowed down a little bit, don't we all? But I think she is still a very good player on this side that will be utilized. And for whatever reason, that game, it didn't work out for her.
She could have slowed down a little, don't we all, is the most real thing, McCall. But arguably, Press at 60%, 70% is still better than most people at 100%. And Angel City interim head coach Sam Lady was asked about this in his postgame availability, and he said, yes, Press was available. The game was getting extremely transitional, so perhaps not a good game for Christen now in terms of her recovery. So to me, that sounds like they're really gradually easing her back into action. Remember, she has had 4 surgeries after that initial ACL tear. So it has been a long, tough road to recovery. And the last thing you want to do is throw a player into the mix, into a match when they're not 100% ready in terms of fitness, in terms of the physicality, even though she's available there off the bench and has time and chance to do it. Guys, we love your questions. Thank you for sending them in. Hit us up on socials at Attacking Third. If you're with us on YouTube, you can drop them in the comments section. Producer Mark, he gathers them all and he lays them out for us. So let us know if you have specific ones for Lo, for McCall, for Christine, Darian, Sandra, myself. Let us also know that, because we'll cater them directly towards that person, because Jess McDonald, she's also in the mix. Our roster is growing here at A3 and it is the best. That does it for today's show of Attacking Third. Thanks for joining us. Reminder, you can listen to us anywhere you get your podcast, but special episode coming up on Thursday. We will be in studio at 3 p.m. Eastern as we get ready for week 2 in the NWSL. So tune into that on the Golazo Network and watch Attacking Third. Thanks, everyone, so much for hanging with us today. For producer Mark, Christine, McCall, I'm Lisa. This was Attacking Third. See you Thursday.